Start the recording. Great. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the YRBiz Roadmap to Recovery webinar series. The topic for today's session is Agile Business Planning, and we are so excited to have an amazing lineup of fellow business owners and speakers on today's session that will be sharing their insights and their expertise in terms of how to navigate these challenging times using the principles of Agile business planning. To kick things off, I'd like to invite Charles Banfield, the Manager of Innovation from the region of York, to share some welcome remarks. Charles?
Thank you, Karen. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us today. As Karen said, my name is Charles Banfield, and I'm the Manager of Strategic Economic Initiatives at the Regional Municipality of York. So today is the sixth in a series of webinars designed to provide a roadmap to post-COVID recovery. And these webinars provide information and resources that can help businesses navigate the current economic environment and make the necessary adjustments to their operations to enable them to thrive in a post-pandemic economy. So this pandemic has created massive disruptions in how businesses operate and how consumers buy, and has also turned many industries upside down. However, with uncertainty comes opportunities for businesses that are quick to recognize them and are able to adjust to capitalize them. Being agile is more of a competitive advantage now than ever before. So in today's session, you will learn about strategies and tools to adopt agile business planning processes. And you will also be exposed to insights and firsthand experiences from business owners who have leveraged agile planning in their own operations. So our hope is that you'll be able to leverage this knowledge that's being shared today by our experts and benefit your own organization. So to close, I wish to thank the Newmarket and Vaughan Chambers of Commerce and the York Region Business Coalition, who continue to partner with us in developing and delivering this webinar series. And I'd also like to extend a special thank you to today's presenters and to Karen Dubois for organizing today's event. So thank you all once again for joining us, and back to you, Karen.
Thanks so much, Charles. I forgot to introduce myself earlier. So I am Karen Dubois, and I'm your MC for today's event. We also extend, on behalf of the Newmarket and Vaughan Chamber of Commerce, a sincere thank you to the region of York for their support for this series. So just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This session is being recorded. What we're going to do is send out a link to all the attendees after the session, so you can access a recorded version of it. And so it just helps that you don't have to, try to keep notes as we go along. You'll have access to the full recording, as well as presenter materials. This webinar platform supports both chat and Q&A functions, so we would encourage you to use both. There is a brokered Q&A session towards the end of the webinar, and we would strongly encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity to pick the brains of these creative minds that we have on our speaker panel today. And so with that in mind, I'd like to get started. I'm pleased to introduce our first speaker, Chris Carter, who's co-director of entrepreneurship studies at Schulich at the University of York. He has been deeply involved in a lot of the entrepreneurship programs available across York region. So Chris, would you like to get started and introduce the principles of Agile business planning?
Absolutely, and thank you. Thanks, Karen, for the introduction. In addition to being the head of the Entrepreneurial Studies program at Schulich, I'm also a serial entrepreneur. And so my thinkings and reflections on this come from that history of 25 years of running and building several businesses. And so if you visit my LinkedIn profile, one of the things you'll see that it says on there is survivor of epic storms. And so I think really that's what, when we think about Agile, we have to think about when we're in a storm, we're in a crisis, how do we approach that and how do we get through? And I've broken that down into 3 basic principles to look at and always keep aware of. And I think you're going to see those principles reflected in the speakers and stories we have today of people who are succeeding in this current situation. So first off, the number one thing is we have to keep moving. The reaction in a moment of crisis is to freeze and to hold up and to try and like just say, okay, I just got to like hold on to what I have. But the real number one principle is like, am I ready to move? Because a mentor once came to me in the beginning of the dot-com collapse with my first business, and he said, look, he gave me a book to read. He took it away, and I read it, and I had to come back and tell him what it meant. And really, I said, this means that this is the biggest opportunity I'm going to have in my life. But I just have to figure out what to do with it. And I really firmly believe that times of crisis, that you can actually take a leap forward with your business fundamentally, that takes you into interesting and compelling new places. So when the rest of the world is freezing, you need to be prepared to keep moving. Now, what does that mean? How are we going to keep moving, and what are we going to be like, have to keep our minds and our eyes and our hearts open to as that's happening? Well, we have to be eyes wide open and ears wide open. And that means that we can't withdraw into ourselves, into the dark room, into the recesses of our business and like scheme away to ourselves. We have to be out, we have to be connected, to be networking with people, to be talking to our customers, to be talking to prospects, to be listening and reading and thinking about what the possibilities are as the world is changing around us, and how those changes and how those possibilities are unlocking new connection points with the things that we have in our businesses, with our services, with our products, what we could be, what we could change, and how we could be different in that moment. And I've seen, we have at Schulich, in the Schulich startups community, we now have 150 companies that are Schulich founded companies within our portfolio, both from students that are building their companies right now and recent graduates. And I can tell you that this sense of looking for the possible and keeping their eyes open and listening and having conversations has led to some incredible moments. I'm going to tell you about a couple of them just as we kick off today. And the last key principle that I have in terms of how we look at these moments of crisis and how we apply them to our business, and it applies to the crisis moments, but it's also, these are general principles for staying agile and staying open to change and transformation, even in times of stability and prosperity. The last one is to really focus on the assets that you have versus the gaps. So as opposed to what, holding on to the things that have disappeared or have gone astray or that have changed, it's about how do we look at the things that are inside our business. It's those moments where you look at, in my community, the local bakery that understood that they had family members that really understood Instagram and how to use it, right? And they understood how to look at the assets they had in terms of what the things were they sold and transform them into experiences in this new pandemic world. So focusing on the assets versus the gaps. Okay, so those are my three key principles. Now I'm going to give you three very quick examples of organizations, small businesses, these are all businesses that are in their opening like 6 to 12 months of existence, and how they approach this. The first is one of our Schulich companies called Blade Filters. And previously, they were very focused on providing air filtration for the cannabis industry, big licensed producers, and how to filter the particulates out of the air in the production facilities. Well, within literally 2 weeks of the pandemic hitting, and then reading about what was going on and thinking, reflecting, reaching out to mentors and contacts and people in the community, they realized a couple things. One, that their core market was going to have a bit of a slowdown in terms of embracing innovation. It was just going to hold on to what it had. So they weren't going to get a lot of new orders from there. But they also understood that air quality and what that meant from a health perspective was about to become a major shift in the market. So within 45 days, they went through the process of redesigning their entire unit and bringing it into as opposed to being a factory, bringing it into a small business environment. And here we are at the end of the summer. And the first year in business, they did about $200,000 worth of sales. This Monday, they had a $750,000 purchase order. So it's like understanding what's opening up and what the possibilities are in the marketplace. The second example here was Swift. This is a company that is in the logistics business, back-end platform for e-commerce. And this gentleman just started his business in January. And when the moment hit of the pandemic, I called him up and we had a conversation. We said, this is about to be the biggest fast forward of e-commerce in the history of the world, right? He was currently working a job at Amazon in a great, steady, stable, full-time, high-paying job. And I said to him, you know what you have to do? You have to walk in 48 hours and quit your job in the middle of an economic collapse, right? In the most stable job in one of the biggest companies in the world, and quit. Because the moment was there to realize that people were going to need a delivery mechanism as e-commerce started to choke the infrastructure of the city. And within 45 days, he had raised $3 million for his business. And now the business is on boom. And lastly, last example I'll give you is this company called Bibo. And they're a member of all these are members of our Schulich community. And this is a graduate who built this business. It's an Uber style delivery for building supplies and lumber for home builders and contractors. He launched it in the middle of the pandemic. And not only did he launch in the middle of the pandemic, there was a lumber shortage that hit right in the middle of the pandemic. So again, coming back to this principle of, do we have an asset or do we have like a gap? And how do we view all that? And how do we stay positive and creative? As opposed to thinking there's no lumber, he thought there is lumber somewhere in the city. There is lumber somewhere in the province. And by God, if there's lumber somewhere, I'm going to find it and deliver it. And found a way to get his hands on all the lumber that there was, and became the best resource for home builders and contractors to make those orders. And his business has taken off like a rocket. And now he's in the process of raising his Series A. So to kick off today, they're going to get great stories and great insights from the speakers and the guests and the advisors that we have here today. I'm excited to hear from all of them and hear their stories. But I think these are the principles that I want you to think about as you're approaching your own business now and in the future, and how you stay eyes wide open, keep moving, and really concentrate on your assets versus what you don't have in the moment.
That's amazing, Chris. Thanks so much for sharing that. And it is very inspiring to see how people have been able to shift gears, recognize opportunities, and then move quickly to take advantage of those openings. Our next speaker is DEE-ANNA Petrini, I'm sorry, DEE-ANNA, and she is an executive coach and is co-founder of the Captain's Chair. And she's going to share with us her experiences in tapping into creative mindsets. So DEE-ANNA, if you want to take it away.
Yes, thank you so much. And I am so excited to be a part of this. You know, in the few short minutes that we've started this call already, it's so clear to me that the people in this room are hearing and sensing what is needed and what is happening. Because as I listen to Chris speak, I am finding a lot of parallels in the stories that I want to be sharing. So I hope that you will take this as real resonance of what is urgent and really right now. I'll start by figuring out how to move to the next slide. There we go. So just quickly about me, I'm a mom to 4 very expensive children. As the late, great Victor Borge said, I'd like to thank my parents for making this possible and my children for making it necessary. And my kids are a real catalyst to all of my big endeavors. My background used to be in sales, but I moved from corporate sales to coaching in 2007. I coach all kinds of people, really one-on-one businesses and senior executive leaderships for global organizations. But I also run masterminds, and I'm the co-founder of the Captain's Chair that helps small businesses thrive and not just survive. And what I'd like to do with you today is play a little bit around mindset. So the ideas that I'm going to bring up here aren't anything new, but what I'd love to offer is that they are for you now. So first things first, keeping a learner's mind and being open to new ideas. This is such a big deal because there's such a seduction to know the right answers and be stoic and have a vision of what the future has to bring. But I am certain, I think that this time in the world is showing everyone that that kind of certainty is not helpful or sustainable in times of crisis. So you can see, what does that have to do with Blockbuster and Netflix? Some of you might know the story that in 2000, Netflix approached Blockbuster to merge, and Blockbuster literally laughed them out of the meeting room, saying that the dot-com what's the word that I'm looking for? The dot-com was overblown and not going to be as big a deal as people say that it would be. And of course, they laughed all their way into bankruptcy. So what I'd love to offer here is that for the remainder of the call, we gently allow learner's mind to see what is possible when we don't know and we are curious, because curiosity and judgment are mutually exclusive and can't be in the same place at the same time. So let's see who is doing well. I'm really excited to share a couple of stories of small businesses in Canada that are doing really well. So Sherrington's is an independent clothing store in Newfoundland. And when the pandemic hit and all real retail stores had to close, they had to figure out a new way to reach their clients. Now, what they did have was established relationships with customers. So they leveraged that and created a fashion shows right outside of their stores outside. People came to watch those shows or watch them online. They created simple order forms and they were off to the races. They literally had difficulty keeping product in stock. Starting small things can have a very large impact. This cost them essentially nothing. All they needed to do was tap into what they already knew they had, which was their customers' attention, and they needed to know just how to reach it. So a really nice experiment of how small things can make great differences. Expand your reach, get more customers. Why didn't I think of that? Sometimes the most common, the most simple, the most obvious idea is the one that we're not focusing on directly. So here are a couple of examples of some companies of how they looked to reach more customers. Mimi Foods is a wholesaler of dough to restaurants in the GTA. And obviously when those orders started diminishing because of the pandemic, they also, they were thinking about how to get more customers and get more business. And they observed the huge influx of home bakers. So they launched a social media campaign, which was very cost effective. Again, minimum viable product, mainly on Instagram. And they targeted home bakers and sold dough directly to consumers. That went so unbelievably well for them that they have opened a cash and carry store right in their manufacturing facilities here in Vaughan. Another story is Destiny Dance. This one is a little bittersweet because a lot of dance schools have closed because of the pandemic, including our children's dance school. But Destiny Dance had an idea and they thought about creating virtual dance competitions. What's interesting here is that they had 300 current customers, students, who did not want to participate in their virtual dance competition. But because the barrier to entry was so low, again, minimal cost to go digital and create an online dance competition, they did it anyway and found 200 in the first month, found 200 brand new customers across Canada of dancers that otherwise would have never had the opportunity to participate in such a competition. So how else can you reach new people or more of the same people? Now, if you are like my husband, the owner of Olympic trophies, your product and service may no longer be useful to the market. Olympic trophies depends on the congregation of large groups of people, and that is not happening anymore. And he has a very large facility, and what will he do in order to keep his doors open? Well, in come Atlanta Kick. Atlanta Kick is a 10,000 square foot fitness martial arts facility in Atlanta, Georgia. They had a similar challenge with customers not being able to come into their facility in the numbers that they were used to having in order to cover their very large rental costs. So what they did was really interesting, and they partnered with local schools and created day camps of remote learning pods. They took that space, they brought in desks, they brought in dividers. They have 3 teachers circulating, supporting children who are doing online studies, but not going into school so that their parents can go to work. And just for fun, they charge $300 a week. They have 18 children participating in this program. And it has really helped them to stay in business and cover their costs. Because when the environment does change and we will be able to congregate again, their core business will again become fully relevant. But they are able to run both of these businesses simultaneously. So another thing to think about is, what are the resources that you have? You may not be able to be a martial arts school today or a trophy distributor today, but what can you do with your vendors, your space, your staff, and all of your infrastructure? Well, again, another easy one. How do you do any of this? Ask for help. Who do you ask for help? Ask the person right beside you. There is no need to overcomplicate things. The person beside you will lead you to a next person, to a next person, to a next person. In my years of coaching, I've learned one thing. It is never the how-to that is the challenge. If you want to learn how to do something, you can find a billion videos on YouTube. Ask your neighbor, listen to a story, go to a networking group, listen to a lecture. But what is necessary is to be open enough to have those conversations. And Chris talked about that also. So really, this is what is in the space. And like Chris said also, this is a time of opportunity. If in the past you've been afraid to ask, this is not the time. We are all in the same boat together. People are going to be really open to having these kinds of discussion with you. Now, when I look at 1 + 1 is 3, what that means to me is this: 2 people cannot have the answers individually, but together can come up with viable solutions. So ask for help, find your collaborators, talk to somebody, then talk to somebody else. We are all in this together, and you are naturally creative, resourceful, and whole. If you are looking, there's an Italian expression that says, chi cerca trova. If you are looking, you will find. And I have great confidence that that is available to all of us. Thank you. You are muted, Karen.
Thanks. Thanks so much for sharing those insights. It must be really exciting to be in those types of conversations where you see those sparks and those connections being made, and at that time, in this time of stress, those are such energizing conversations. So thank you for sharing that. Our next speaker is Jennifer McLaughlin, and she is the owner of Cache Supper Club. She has a lot of really exciting things to share, and in terms of how she's applied these principles of Agile that both Deanna and Chris have touched upon. So Jennifer, would you like to share your story and your insights?
Thank you, Karen and Deanna and Chris. That was wonderful. And thank you for that. I learn every time I'm around this group. So it's so just wonderful. I'm just going to go over how I applied some of the principles that Deanna and Chris have referred to. And I'm going to pull up a little bit of a PowerPoint to do so. I'm just going to share my screen though. That would probably help. As I'm the only one looking at it right now. Okay.
Awesome.
So like Karen had mentioned, I own Cache Supper Club, which is just a restaurant in Newmarket. We have 200 seats on our patio and 50 seats in our main dining room. And then we have a private dining room that sits about 30. So you can imagine in March, none of that was going to be relevant anymore. And because we're a casual fine dining, we were not necessarily a takeout place. Not a lot of people like to order, you know, rack of lamb takeout wise or a steak. So it was going to come to a screeching halt, my cash flow, like everybody else in March. And I went back to the drawing board and I pulled out my marketing plan and I pulled out my business plan. And I've come from an industry that I have done pandemic planning for large organizations. So I had one of those when I had come in, and I reevaluated everything. I joined some network groups. I reached out to a mentor and I said, okay, I've been quiet for 2 weeks. I've done a new SWOT analysis and this is where I'm at. And my SWOT analysis, strengths, weakness, opportunity, and threats, that's one of my regular routine go to when I'm creating my cash flow or I'm forecasting or I'm analyzing my KPIs from the previous year or previous quarter. And I go back and I highly recommend us all going back to the basics, as they say. And the SWOT analysis for me is really the easiest way to do so. So I went and I understood with my business, my strengths. I have a supportive, recurring community base. I knew going in February, March, looking at what was going on globally, there'd be a need for entertainment. There's going to be a need for consumer engagement. I knew I had a great reputation. I knew that I had strong, supportive, creative staff around me. But then I knew that I didn't really have a website. And I had 300 Instagram followers. I didn't even look at Facebook. And I never used social media. I knew that I had overhead expenses, and I knew that if I was going to recreate something, that this would be a brand new product launch. And how was I going to do that going into a situation where my cash flow was flat and I wouldn't be able to leverage the marketing dollars I normally would? I knew I had a weakness. I didn't have any current procedures. I didn't have employment contracts. I didn't have a current marketing strategy. And I absolutely had no data to back up what my new venture might be. I knew my opportunities over the last few years because when I bought the restaurant in 2017 and did my planning, I looked at a bunch of opportunities. I went down to the Chicago National Restaurant Food Show. And they talked about ghost kitchens, and I came back to Canada and I said, okay, this isn't going to be a thing, but I'm going to put it in my back pocket for later. There wasn't, in the States, they were doing kind of boxes and what have you, but in Canada, consumer behavior, not necessarily there. I knew I had an opportunity with interactive cooking with Zoom and meetings I had just scratched the surface on, and more so family time around Easter. And I said, okay, I could integrate something like that into some sort of interaction. I knew I had a catering division that might need to be tapped into a little more than it used to be. I also said, okay, I've got mental health situation going on here with everything up in the air. So maybe I'll just take a vacation and we'll just call it a day. I took an opportunity to sit down and reanalyze my strategic planning and said, all right, well, let's start there. And then there's going to be need for fundraising, which is part and parcel of what one of my strengths was with my supportive reoccurring community base. And then my threats. I knew takeout wasn't going to be, I don't have a unique offering of a menu. And the competition was in the rise as takeout for the food and beverage industry was really the only thing available in April at that point. I knew consumers didn't want to go out. I knew there was pandemic regulations, and I knew consumers aren't going to have the cash flow in the next 24 months of what I would assume the pandemic is from my previous career. So I took the SWOT analysis, I chopped it all up, I analyzed it. This is just a high level version. And I did that in February, I did that in April, I did that in June, I did that in July, I did that in August, I did that in October, and or I'm going to next month, and I'm going to again in February. And I mapped out when would I have enough data to look at this ever-changing landscape, and how can my business be as agile as it can with no data to back me up in an unforeseen world of what we were all going into. But I knew I needed to get a competitive advantage, and immediately, because I had opportunities. Like Chris said, I looked at it and said, okay, this is actually exciting. It's time to go back. And I did so by the week after Easter. I said, the only way to discover the limits of the possible is go on beyond into the impossible. And I paired up with one of my old staff from my security world, who's now a chef in England. And I said, let's go. Let's get creative and let's do a virtual cooking with cachet. And I reanalyzed and I took what was out there, HelloFresh, met the experience boxes with what were my strengths for my restaurant specifically, and the book model came about. And that lasted me through pretty much right up to when we were open in June. And all along, people saying, do you think this is going to last more when we're allowed to open? And my response was, I'm planning for 24 months, and I'm going to keep on that plan. And there's going to be a moment that my patio shut down again, whether that's weather or pandemic related. And I've got to keep this business going, and I have an opportunity. And I know that from my SWOT analysis. After the first, within those 3 months of my reviews, after the first 3 classes, the best time this, so I knew I had some traction and some motivation there, even though I didn't necessarily have a lot of data to back that up. I had to change, I had to sit, I had to analyze, I had to say, okay, my labor model, usually per hour, and these people, and under 30%, but target for 15, and I reinvented, okay, now I'm going to pay my entertainers in 15-minute intervals. I'm going to pay my chef per piece. I'm going to pay my hosts, which were my servers, per piece, 15-minute intervals. And I went back and I really was agile in all the stages of my planning. I've ripped apart my marketing model, and I looked at my classic marketing, and I realized, okay, yep, nope, I need to get into this digital world, and I need to do it quickly. Like I said, I had 350 followers on my Instagram. I now have, this morning I checked, 1,511 followers. I haven't paid a penny for marketing yet in 2020. So we're saying we're just organically reassessing, reevaluating, being agile. I didn't have a website. I created it, and I've had 24,901 unique visits as of this morning to that website. Again, there hasn't been any marketing aligned whatsoever, which does exceed what my normal consumer base of my biggest strength was my community reoccurring. And I've been able through the planning to reach outside of that. Going into the winter, though, I did touch on the ghost kitchen. So this is what I had done with my Cooking with Cachet and my Agile planning for the first portion of the pandemic. And then we got to open up, and there's been a lot of Agile business movement of how we're going through the regulations and the cash flow. And the whole time I've been analyzing and reanalyzing what I set as my new KPIs, which is really all my digital. And I knew going into this winter with the patio closed, and pandemics are usually 24 months or so, I knew I was going to be in the same place I was in March, come October, November. And I pulled out of my pocket the ghost kitchen, and I started doing some research, and I said, okay, is Canada ready for this? Is the new environment ready for this? And I started reaching out. I got some mentors in the industry, US and Canada. And we've now set up, we have 10 brands, including some real key brands that we've signed TLAs with, running out of our kitchen. So going into what I would consider a shutdown restaurant this winter, which after Thanksgiving, we're shutting our patio down. We are not opening the interior of our restaurant unless it's a private group. And we are running solely on Cooking with Cachet and our ghost kitchen. And the ghost kitchen will have 10 brands over 7 shops. They will all be takeout, they'll all be online, and I'll be minimizing my labor just with my staff in the kitchen. And what I want to say about all of that, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here. There we go. So what I want to say about all of that is my experience as a tiny little restaurant owner in Newmarket, Ontario, is when I was put up against the wall with, wow, I've got to reinvent my entire business from the way it is right now. Going back to the basics and planning in increments of monthly and quarterly was key. And I am actually taking the opportunity to spend the entire winter quiet, digital, and I expect my forecast for next year will be the best year that I've ever had at the restaurant with these new lines of business. So that's my little story. Thank you, Karen, and thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, thanks so much. You are doing some great work, Jennifer, and certainly there's lots of comments in the chat that people are noticing your passion and your energy, and just really appreciative of your spirit. So thank you for sharing with us. So we're going to move into the panel session now, and we have some additional business owners who are with us. And Payman, I'm going to flick over to you because you're a tech company. You're in the Internet of Things space, sensors and devices, and you took this opportunity to create a brand new product that was not in line with your business. So could you share a little bit about your story and your experience?
Sure, thank you, and thanks for all the presenters. They were great. So yes, our main line of business is location tracking and sensing, mainly for inventory tracking, asset management, and real-time quality control. So before the pandemic, and even during the pandemic, we've been doing really great as a company because we're in the business of tracking, and if anything, people need more tracking during the pandemic. So for us, it was not so much we did the pivot because we wanted to survive in this environment. It was more where we thought the market or the community needs help. So our sales was at our all-time highest with our existing products, but then we just shifted to build a social distancing solution from ideation to commercialization in literally 3 months. And the normal product cycle for these type of devices is about 18 months to 24 months, depending on the company that actually executes it. So this little thing you can see over here, which I showed it to some people and they laugh. I said, this tracks the date, time, and duration of interactions between people, and they just were in their office, and this actually blinks if two people come in close proximity of each other. So imagine from an ideation, our team gets into the room until we have the product certified, and now we have a capacity of making 50,000 of these badges per month. And yeah, we're ready to roll. So, so this whole process was, I think it was more purpose than anything else. So when we brought our engineering team together, we just had to make a number of choices. And this really goes back to Agile. So the sequential way of building products is the management teams gets together, we make a business plan. With tech companies, it's very common that we have to go out there and raise investment. And then we start, or in parallel, we do the development and talking to customers and etc. So because of the timelines, what we've done is while people or other companies were in the process of raising investment, we just interviewed as many customers as we can. This is more essential workplaces, industrial places, long-term care home facilities, and really understood what is it that they need with their existing situation when it comes to social distancing. So we took that information and then we changed our business model so we could skip the process of raising investment because that usually takes a long time. So we went from customer requirements to development in such a short time, in literally 2 weeks. And then the development process, here we have this device ready to go and commercialize. That's in a nutshell.
That's incredible. I'm going to ask you to just share a little bit because you said you had a separate website for the product. Can you just explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so the process of commercialization is, it's not just getting the product to work. I mean, that's an important part, but it's not everything. So the infrastructure to support the sales and distribution and etc. So our website is Paytech, which is our company. So we build a separate website called COVID19tag.com, where people can come in and they could just go visit the website, see all the information, they can purchase it. So from the point of purchase, everything is automatic to the point of delivery. So we have built that whole supply chain and distribution, and people get the products in their facility, which is all plug and play in such a short time. So if I were to sort of like point at little things is that, let's say a company, which is our size, we're more an SME, how could we scale our operations so we can address a larger group of audience in such a short time, right? So there has to be a lot of automation in place. So from buying these products and the ability for customers to install these products themselves is what's been designed so that we can support the scale of the demand with these products.
Amazing. Yeah, so great. And since you mentioned supply chain, this is a great opportunity to engage Marcia. Marcia, your company, Fresh Spoke, two amazing things actually during the pandemic. Not only did a raise, but you actually looked at how the industry was changing and how the supply chains were reconfiguring and used that as an opportunity to grow your business. Would you like to share a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for the other panelists. It was great to hear all of your stories and insights. So Fresh Spoke, just as a background, we're a local food marketplace that provides folks like retailers, restaurants, and institutions with the ability to source local food directly from wholesale suppliers, like our farmers, growers, and food and beverage artisans. And then we coordinate the order, the payment, and the delivery to the door, all as one automated transaction. But the key to our platform is how we deliver, which is tapping into excess capacity and commercial delivery. So we have a really strong sustainability ethos within our platform. And, we've sat sort of squarely in the middle of a three-sided marketplace since 2016 in work in two very antiquated industries within the supply chain, transportation, and food. And so for a very long time, we are a tech company that got into food. And so we were very much focused on building technologies out for the past 4 years. But of course, we're building them out faster than the supply chain is adapting to the technology. So what COVID really did when it came along in our particular circumstances, it really showed the fractures in the supply chain. And anybody who had bought anything during the COVID, who were trying to get groceries during COVID knows firsthand just how broken a food system we really have. We don't have a sovereign food system. 80% of our food is actually imported into Canada. So all of a sudden with COVID, we had this massive shift where all of a sudden we had an incredible wake-up call that dwarfed the 9/11 wake-up call around food, that really started to address the issues of, supply chain issues as it related to food, and how do we create a more sovereign, secure food system, and also how do we ensure that the food supply chain is there for us going forward? Because if we don't support our local food suppliers, they're not going to be there for us. And so we found ourselves squarely in the middle of this massive shift. And over the course of a matter of 3 weeks, we saw 1 to 2% of all groceries being purchased online to 10 to 15% of all food groceries being purchased online in weeks. So in our case, we recognize that as a wholesale supplier and dealing specifically as distribution, that there was because we had all this tech built, that there was this great opportunity for us to actually further support our local food suppliers that we work with, and actually get into the B2C side with home and curbside pickup. But of course, we're all about excess capacity, access, and not ownership. So we don't have warehouses. We use other people's warehouses. We don't have trucks and delivery. We use other people's. So we found ourselves in a situation where we realized that we needed to actually invest in the capital of having our own distribution hub. And that is capital that we simply didn't have as a startup. So fortunately for us, we have always been really engaged with our investors. I'm a voracious grant writer. So over the course of that period of time, we engaged our existing investors who not only invested in our round of $500,000, but they also brought other people to the table to invest in this round as well, including really exciting investors like the family that owns Tridel, for example. The Delzato family are now an investor in us and very much believe in what it is that we're doing on the food security and resiliency side. So we were able to raise $500,000 through our own private investors and through angels and and institutional investors like SOS Ventures, who were previously with us. And then we also were able to get another $180,000 in grants through 3 different grant opportunities that came up in terms of agri-food, as well as tech and research and innovation grants. So needless to say, it's been an incredibly voracious pace. We now are ready to open our facility. We had to rebuild all of our tech to accommodate home delivery, which actually is nuanced quite differently than wholesale. And we'll open up in October and start doing home and curbside pickup to Simcoe County, Muskoka region, and York region from this this distribution hub that will service that cluster down into Toronto. And now we have a really exciting opportunity ahead of us with a fairly large social impact organization that's North America wide, that is now looking at that food resiliency side of the social impact mission that they're on, and looking to come to the table to partner with us to not only take our distribution model here, but actually to build these distribution model hubs for local food across Ontario out to Canada and the rest of North America. So we've had a massive shift in our own business model as a result of COVID, just by doing exactly what Chris and Deanna and Jennifer have talked about, which is, we didn't sort of just go into, a fetal position and get under the covers. We We talked more than we ever have before. We listened more than we ever did before. We did more market research than we ever did. And we, everybody on my team, went pedal to the metal. And we worked really, really hard, that in a matter of, months, we were able to retool our business, redefine our entire business model, but frankly, in a much more scalable and more meaningful strategic way than we ever could have back in February, for sure.
So that's really cool. So you think your company is even stronger than it was before the pandemic?
100%. We have a stronger team. Because this showed these cracks, right? It starts to show cracks in your business model, and we can ignore them when times are good, right? Or you're just blind to them when times are good. But yeah, definitely, it really helped to align our business and to really provide a sense of clarity that just wasn't there before. And I don't know which panelist said it, but somebody said, the openness, I think it was you, DEE-ANNA, people are open now more than they ever have been before, right? It's a much more authentic, engaged business community than it ever has before. I work closely with Chris Adams. You'll probably hear from him, hopefully, as well. Hopefully there's room. But Chris would probably attest to this. I'm a DMZ Ryerson company. I deal with SOS Ventures. I spend a good portion of my time just talking to advisors and scooping up and sucking up all the information that I can. Because you can't make these kinds of decisions in a vacuum, and you can't change things just for the sake of changing things. You want to make sure that you've got that sober second thought that's well backed up by data and research, for sure.
Yeah, thanks so much, Marcia. I mean, really, there's so much here to explore, and we do want to get to Chris. So Chris, you are a serial entrepreneur. You've done your own raises. You're an angel investor. You're a mentor with the Henry Bernick Center out of Georgian College. What are you seeing in this, especially for startups, but also for small businesses, because you work so closely with them?
Well, thanks, Karen. It's great to hear everybody's stories today. And it's great to see Chris Carter on the call too. We used to interact in the early 2000s. So and Marcia, the FreshSpoke story is amazing. Obviously, being your advisor, it's been great to see you expand over the past few months. To echo Jennifer's statements, she was talking about cash flow and really kind of getting into knowing what your cash flow is like and understanding it from a monthly and a quarterly basis, and really kind of drilling in and asking yourself questions on, as cash is coming in and it's going out, how does that all work, and really looking at that from a very detailed level. And I think we forget about that in the good days, as Marcia was saying, but in these COVID days, truly understanding that can be pivotal in making the right business decisions and what you might want to be retailing and might not want to be retailing, or in your restaurant or in other areas of business. The other piece is too our digital transformation. And as much as we say digital transformation, that could be a new website, that could be a whole new model of adopting Lightspeed or Shopify, if you had Lightspeed and a point of sale system and going online during these times, or what you might have done. That sometimes is thinking of it as climbing Mount Everest, but I think what we need to realize is that just to do small tests on a weekly basis or a monthly basis and really embrace the journey of adopting technology and adopting that change, because really digital is going to improve the efficiencies of your organization, and potentially, if you're retail, expand your reach beyond Vaughan and Newmarket. If you're in restaurants, getting more in touch with your customers through a CRM and really kind of changing the way you interact with customers, not just from a one-off standpoint from every couple of weeks to understanding them in general. So those are the things that I believe in, and the COVID sort of forced this on us. One story I can tell you from the past is back in the day when I had hair, my parents ran an M&M meat shops in Georgina and Keswick, and Big Zares came along and took 30-40% of our monthly revenue immediately the day that the store opened. So obviously that was a traumatic experience for my parents at the time. But from what I learned from my father as he went through that experience was he did the exact same thing that happened in COVID. And what Jennifer said, look at your cash flow, look exactly at what's happening on a monthly and quarterly basis. Really look at your expenses and don't worry about gross. Worry about what the net result is at the end of the day. Because I think after a whole year, you might realize that your gross is down, but you might actually have a higher net revenue. So that's the kind of thing that you need to do. And from there, you can only get stronger as your base gets stronger, and you can then leverage that as, let's say COVID starts to go away. So Karen, there's
right. Thanks, Chris. I have a quick follow-up question. And by the way, because there's so many great speakers and great information, we are going to plan to go just a little bit over one. So I hope you'll stay with us for that. But Chris, as an angel investor and being involved with Georgian Angels, are you seeing an increase in the pipeline flow of opportunities?
Yes, there's still activity happening, and the angels still want to. I think we've done about $10 million over the past 8 years in terms of money that we've distributed to various sort of tech and other sort of startups. I would say that if I was to analyze this next quarter of intake, they're probably all mostly tech related. I think obviously digital transformation is it's there, and as you can see, probably in the stock market, everything that's kind of gone up has been tech related. So I would say that if you have a tech startup, you're probably going to be friends. The angels are going to be friends with you at this time.
Right. Good advice. I wanted to ask our panelists, and I'll start with Jennifer McLaughlin. What resources do you use? Some of them have mentioned, some of our speakers have shared about mentors, but what resources do you rely on from the community to bounce ideas and get information?
Oh, there's both of it. Thank you, Karen. Well, just rewind back to even last year and what Marcia said. I love grant writing as well. It's one of my fun little side line items there that I found in the last 3 years. And so last year, I reached out to York Small Business Enterprise Center, and Charles is here now. And I did get the $5,000 grant, and it was divided up into 2 payments. One was last year, and it was just so great. I'd reached out, I want to say March-ish, and said, wonder if I can get that last 1,500 because I got an idea and some boxes to buy. And I actually took the check from the York Region Business Enterprise, and I pretty much handed it over to the Wolf Pack in town and said, I need boxes and we need design, and I'm going to start shipping food out in boxes. So that's a really great one. And for everyone on the call, there are so many between the chambers and Karen, I know you continue to distribute what the resources are, and I thank you for that. But reach out to this York Region Small Business Enterprise Center and straight up from mentors I've been given. So I've got some mentors from the city that I've spent time with, and it's just been a wealth of resources there. So thanks for asking.
Great. Thanks so much, Jen. And there's a small business center in Markham. Vaughan has its own business enterprise center. I know there's one in Barrie and South Simcoe. So there's lots of these organizations around. So as Jen said, please reach out. They're publicly funded, and their sole goal and mission is to help support and grow small businesses. Chris, I know you're, Chris Carter, I know you're with York University. So in terms of agile business planning, if somebody was interested to find out a little bit more about it and do a bit of a deeper dive, are there any resources that you can recommend that they take a look at?
Yeah, there's a number of business resources. We have a program called Launch YU, which is available not only to students and alumni from York, but to all members of the York community to participate in. So you can learn about that. Look them up on Instagram, and we have a group called YSpace as well. So those are 2 big ones that are available. And we also have opportunities, which I think are when you're talking about assets and resources that you could tap into. Students are an incredible resource right now. So we have many different strategic programs where you can get groups of students to come work on a marketing strategy for you, or work on kind of a relook at your business from an innovation standpoint. And these are programs that they do as part of their courses at Schulich at the business school, and don't cost anything to get done once you get on the list and get approved. So I think students are a tremendous resource, and I think especially in an age of digital transformation being the key, that there's those of us who are on the call today who are like embracing it and jumping out, and Jennifer's skyrocketing her Instagram account as we speak. You've got one more because I added you during the presentation. But for those of us who are trying to learn about it and adapt to that, young people and students, this is their world. They're immersed in it. They're working with it all the time. So I've been impressed how many of the students have been helping advise and guide small businesses to go through their digital transformation. So I'd suggest people look at your, not only York, but other colleges and universities that have programs where the students can really help you out.
Okay, great. Thanks, Chris. By the way, I know there's been some conversations about grants and grant writing. That is a topic that we are looking at addressing through a future YRBiz session, probably towards the end of October. So just to say that we're working on that, and send us a note if that's something you're really interested in. That it is somewhat of a black art / science to grant writing. So we're happy to make that resource available. Marcia, there is a question from one of the attendees. How exactly do you connect the consumer to the vendor, and how do you market your services?
Yeah, good question. So in B2B, it's, obviously it's all about the relationship in B2B. So up until now, our focus on B2B has been primarily through building relationships and sort of more traditional sales strategies, cold calling. We also happen to be a vendor of record with Sobeys Metro, Whole Foods, Healthy Planet, Organic Garage, all those folks. And so those relationships help us to get into more stores. They oftentimes will refer suppliers back to us. B2C is super exciting for me. I owned an ad agency for 13 years. And so I'm really super thrilled to be back in the space again, where I get to actually wear my marketing hat again. And so in our particular case, obviously our focus is on social media. We're really leaning into the socials on the B2C side. We're certainly allocating some serious money to pay-per-click and also PPC through Google AdWords, as well as through the socials. And actually, you don't have to spend a lot of money on campaigns in the socials, but it does help to get yourself out there in front of people. And that's a really good student project as well, because when you're looking at digital transformation, specifically in the area of marketing, this is an area where I do find people think that it is black magic. Once you get on the learning curve and you can understand, it's great. We're also, though, doing a bit of old school. So our strategy also, we just actually produced our first issue of a magazine called Grays, which basically will drop into the totes of every one of our home delivery totes that go out, because we use totes, we don't use cardboard. We're not having any impact on landfill. Everything comes back to us. We want zero impact. So you'll have a nice magazine because we know we have to teach people and educate people about and promote food literacy, about why we should be eating local and what you can do with these products. So we need to inspire people to live that kind of lifestyle. So we're using a real combination of traditional media as well as new media, digital media, to be able to support that. And we're putting, and I'm a marketing person, so we put about 10% of our net revenue back into marketing every month. That money just funnels right back through. And our sort of equation, and I've always told my clients, that if you should be allocating a minimum of 10% of your net revenue back into marketing. So that's what we're doing. And so you'll see those, those magazines. You go to freshspoke.com and you can sign up. If you order food from us, you'll get those magazines, which will be a big piece of that. And then also we, got really creative and went to one of our best excess capacity drivers. He's amazing. He does a lot of delivery for us. And I said, hey, if I pay you some money, will you wrap your trucks for me? And he said, you betcha I will. So you'll see FreshSpoke wraps around trucks, because I'm a real big believer also in mobile marketing. So he's going to wrap 3 of his vehicles with FreshSpoke, and they'll be running all over Ontario, because he does delivery from Windsor straight through to Ottawa for us in excess capacity. And so we're doing everything we can, but really got to think outside the box. And the key really is, you know, we've done a really deep dive into who we think our customer is. We have a really solid buyer persona. It's really important that you know your customer and develop these buyer personas. You can change them, they'll change all the time, but if you start with something, you know how to aim for it. And then we basically use some really great market research, ethnographic, demographic information to find out where those people are. And then we do very deliberate targeted marketing. We spend our money where our customers are. We don't try and be all things to all people.
Oh, so cool. For those of you that have followed YRBiz or have been in one of the previous sessions, we have links to all the previous recordings. And there was one that was done by Environics Analytics, which actually looked at Main Street Newmarket and downtown Vaughan, and broke it down by those cultural, ethno, and wealth demographics to, you know, if you're able to tap into that, it really does help target your marketing.
Go and talk to your business librarian. I can't, you know, I will say that to so many different entrepreneurs that I run into that are getting started or really kind of trying to better understand their buyer. You know, every business librarian has access generally to Environics data, which is ethnographic information, PRISM data, and it provides you with these incredible, very 3D looks at your customer. And so, you know, you can start there and you can figure out where they are, and then you can go and do unaddressed ad mail and just target those people, you know, if you're using conventional, or you can do it with social media too, and just specifically choose those postal codes, those neighborhoods as well, for sure.
Yeah, so library is not just for children's story time, right?
No.
A very underutilized resource. I wanted to ask DE-ANNA very quickly. You had touched on the need to ask for help. Can you tell us about the power of tapping into peer networks and what your advice would be for the small businesses?
Well, I think the first thing is, don't do anything alone that can be better done together. There is no need to reinvent the wheel. We should be leveraging each other. So who are your collaborators? Who are your cooperators? Again, as I said, you know, in the presentation, when I say asking for help, yes, you join a network, call all of these small business advisories, participate in the chambers of commerce, but also speak to your vendors, speak to your customers, speak to your competitors, use each other, participate, start having conversations. That is the most direct line. Join a mastermind, get a coach, participate, get out there and participate. Yes.
Good. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have something else you wanted to add there, or?
I think that basically covers the point.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Chris Carter, wanted to check in with you. I think you had a question for Payman.
Yeah, Payman, I just wanted to say, really impressive to be able to get a technology product out the door in 90 days. And I think I appreciate that as a startup technologist. So in the middle of the pandemic, you had to go remote, right? You had to be working and communicating with all these teams. So I think an unmentioned part of all this is leading teams through a crisis, leading teams through a shift from physical to remote environment. So how'd you do it, man? How'd you pull off like getting all those people to rally for 90 days to get that product done for you?
That's a great question.
I'm sure I can tell you it was a little bit slower and more expensive. So we're in the hardware business. So the before the pandemic, if somebody wanted to hand in one of these badges, they would just pass it to the person next door. But now we have to schedule for it. There's a 24 hours delay. It usually costs us $20, $30, depending on how fast we want to get the shipment to the next person, who's literally one of the team members. So that needed a lot of planning, so that we could have like less touch points between people. So this was from just like, transferring the hardware. So let's say someone programs a device, somebody has to test it with the reader, with different people. And then in terms of the other aspect of interactions, Zoom calls and Google Conference has become the norm like everybody else. We don't need training anymore. We just got so good at using it. So yeah, we've sort of swapped to that. And our office as of now is still closed. We're based out of Mars. So we're still working remotely.
I think that's cool. And I have a suggestion. I think like to keep morale up, that, everybody should hire Jennifer and a private event or that kind of thing for your.
That's awesome. Yeah, this is exactly the 1 + 1 is 3 that that DEE-ANNA was talking about. So we're over, and I want to respect people's time. So first of all, I want to thank all of the speakers for giving so generously of your time and experience. It's so amazing, and there's a ton of information we could dive into, but I think this was a really excellent session. I also want to just let people know that we have a special session planned for next week, next Friday, September 25th. And it's kind of touching on something that a few of the other people mentioned in terms of leadership and business owners, which is really about mental wellness. Not only your own mental wellness as an entrepreneur or a business owner, but those of your employees. So we have the Honorable Michael Tobolo, who's MPP for Vaughan Woodbridge, and the Associate Minister for Mental Health and Addiction, who will be talking about what he's seen in generally, the impacts of the pandemic, and what to think you need to think about as a business owner this fall. We also have the Vice President of Policy for the Ontario Chambers of Commerce. There's a free toolkit for employers, mental wellness for employers, that the OCC makes available. So I think it's a great opportunity to hear about this toolkit and how you might be able to take advantage of it. And we'll also have Chelsea Dell from Norbram Insurance from the Chamber Group Insurance Program. So I really would encourage you to take advantage of that. And on October 1st, we'll have the Canadian Trade Commissioner talking about how they've modified the CAN Export for Small Businesses program, because no, people aren't traveling the world anymore and doing big trade shows. So the CAN Export program has been tweaked to really support small businesses to continue to chase and pursue those international markets. So I think that's all for us today. Thank you again to everybody for your participation. It was so inspiring and so exciting, and really hope that we all continue to have a healthy and safe fall. Thanks again, everybody. Okay, bye-bye.